Robbie.
Yes.
One of my favourite movies of yours, one of my favourite movies of all time, Call It Carol.
Oh, Call It Carol, yeah.
It's a fantastic film.
Yeah,
I think
1970, Pete Walker.
Yeah.
I just, I'd been in IF and I worked Pasolini, Zeffirelli, a few other people, and Pete Walker was sort of nosing around for someone to play this part. Joe Sickle was the character.
That's it.
And I've had to do a bit of homework about tonight as well. I had to find out who the other was. He saw me, or he auditioned me, and he just gave me the part straight away. And I was very, very, very excited because things were changing then, 68, 69. There were films like The Graduate, Midnight Cowboy. There was a sort of more, although my career changed later, there was a more realistic approach to acting on screen, and it gave me the chance to play a character who was lost in a big city, had come up from the country. Well, then I did 4 Dimensions of Greta, or with 3 Dimensions as it started, but then the budget got bigger. There were 4 Dimensions,
Yeah.
in which I had to shag Lena Skoog in 3D,
Yeah.
which was quite interesting. And I remember going to see that film with a great actor called Richard Warwick. I don't know if you remember Richard Warwick, who's sadly not with us anymore, who was in If, played Wallace in If. And he said, "Oh, darling," he said, look, he said, the classic cinema in Piccadilly Circus. He said, "Darling, look, it's mine, look, 3 Dimensions of Greta, there's your ass." He said, let's go in and watch this. And we've gone in, and they had 3D, and it was the early days of 3D. And I went in and sat there, and it's an outro to put the glasses on, and as we put the glasses on, I then mount Lena Skoog and give her a jolly good sing to. And it was quite extraordinary, the audience swaying backwards and forwards with her tits, you know, and that was early 3D. Films that you enjoy making, I mean, what a start to go. I was at Bristol University and I was in a play. Lindsay Anderson had seen me in a play, Richard III, and it's where the gag comes from. Robin Askwith played Richard III and Richard III lost. Because it was I'm sure you know this story, it was my first ad lib was in the production of Richard III, in which I was playing Richard III, and I was a huge fan of Laurence Olivier and all the pathetic nose and this. And under the lights, like in Peter Sellers' film, his nose, it started to melt, and it sort of edged, dropped off. And I turned to the audience and went, a nose, my kingdom for the nose. And I was told I would never, ever, ever again appear in a university production. But Lindsay Anderson was there, and it's like a fairy tale beginning. He said, you know, come along, we're casting a film called The Crusaders, which is what it was called at the time. And so it was a dream start to be, although a small part I ended up in the film, to be on the whole shoot for 8 weeks, to be introduced to the magic of filmmaking. Obviously with Lindsay Anderson such a high level, to see what the cameras do, what an assistant does, what a sound guy does. It was like I've never learned anything like that at university. It was a huge training ground. And so that remains as an experience of one of my favourite films. And I've done so many different types of films, like the independent films, the confession films. It's very, very difficult to pinpoint one film as your favourite. Something like Britannia Hospital at the time was considered a pretty crappy film. And it was considered a crappy film mainly because we invaded the Falklands, and it was seen as maybe overcritical of a decaying, corrupt political system, using the hospital as a metaphor, and therefore was virtually ignored. I think it's been rediscovered, that film. I think that was great fun to do, and to shoot to live in a lunatic asylum, which I'm sure many of us here have done involuntarily, so maybe, and to work in a lunatic asylum for 8 weeks with Leonard Rossiter was an interesting experience, especially when once we were filming And because Coney Hatch Lane was still a lunatic asylum while we were filming it, it was an operating lunatic asylum. So you had actors and you had lunatics. And I know what you're thinking. And so you'd queue up for your food every day, which is half the reason an actor does a film in any case, free food. And Leonard Rossiter and I are queuing up for food. And this woman actually said to Leonard Rossiter, he said, I'm terribly sorry, this food is for actors, not the lunatics. Leonard Rossiter was not too pleased.
I've always heard he was quite a perfectionist. Did you?
Well, it's another one of those people you're told it's going to be very, very difficult, and I found him absolutely fantastic to work with. A perfectionist. Most people are perfectionists. And somebody like, especially with humour, you know, a lot of pain in the arses as well. But for me, he wasn't.
Right.
He was a gentleman. Oh, and the funny story about Leonard Rossiter is the Joan Plowright one day said, she said, you and Leonard, you're always going off playing squash, having fun. She said, why don't you never involve me with all the stuff that's going on. I said, well, Joan, you dame, whatever you are. I said, we just keep out your way a bit, really. And she said, well, I'll do anything. I said, all right. And we were walking past Leonard Rossiter's dressing room at what is now, whatever studios it is in Wembley. And I said, go in there. I said, look, there's a pair of his Y-fronts, Dame Olivia. Go in there and sniff his Y-fronts and wave them at me. Oh, I'll do it. I said, so in she goes, picks up the underwear, goes, not noticing that Leonard had just come out of the bathroom. And all he can see is Dame waving it and going, oh, bloody hell, and throw them out. And they never spoke again. But Nicholas Alexandra was, I had a tiny little part in that, but I was put in a hotel in the Madrid Hilton. And I sat there for 2 weeks because I had to do the scene when I run through the sunflower seeds with this girl. And the sunflowers were facing the wrong direction. They were sort of not got there to be at that angle. That's how mad it was. So I'm sitting in the Madrid Hilton for weeks on end waiting for these sunflowers to go around on full money. And I met Oliver Reed one night, who was not even in the film, in the bar, who just happened to be there. He took a bit of liking to me, and we're having a drink, and he went, watch this. He went, watch this. And we're in the Hilton bar in Madrid, and I'm like 18, and he watched this, and there was a huge fish tank behind the bar. He's gone round, got into the fish tank, and he's swimming, pissed out of his head, in his fish tank, grabbing fish, and there's people like standing at the bar going, what? That's Oliver Reed. Pasolini. I'd worked with Franco Zeffirelli, and we hadn't really seen eye to eye, and eventually I was, I got this call from, I tell the story that it was Pasolini, but it wasn't. It was an assistant to Pasolini who phoned me when I got back to London and said, we hear you are a Zeffirelli enemy. Would you come to meet Pasolini? So I went and met him, rather bizarrely, in a suite at the Hyde Park Hotel, which was a strange place for one of Italy's leading communistic poets. But anyway, there he was in this suite. And I don't know, we sort of fell in love at first sight. And his first words to me through an interpreter were, "You look like you use your cock a lot." And I thought, oh God, here we go. So I took my member out and said, "Does it look like it?" And he laughed like a drain. And we became firm friends until the day, sadly, he left this world. And he was an absolute joy. And I have letters from Pasolini, and there's somebody I read, I don't know if it's someone like Melvin Bragg or somebody collects the letters of Pasolini. I actually have a couple that I've kept from him, and working with him was an extraordinary experience. But the thing about Pasolini was he really to arrive on a Zeffirelli set, you're aware of being on a Zeffirelli set, and it's all to me up someone's arse. On Pasolini set, you're aware of being in a community, and I was greeted by Franco Citti, who's was a pretty prolific Italian actor, and I thought, oh, what was he doing here? And he was my dresser. You know, he was handing me the costumes and saying, is everything all right? And he was a very nice man. Ninetto Davioli, and one of the actors was busily putting a bit of hay round the set. He created a fantastic working atmosphere, and whether you believe in his way of shooting films is just a question of personal preference. I personally found it very, very exciting, particularly, and I think you're angling me towards the story of the urinating over a crowd of people in Essex, where I had to do this huge Chaucerian speech and urinate over a crowd of people. The only thing was, he hadn't told the people who were local villagers from Chipping Camden, wherever they were from. They were instructed, as you are now, to sit where you are, and they're all excited villagers being in a film, and an actor's going to come out and he's going to give you some Chaucerian stuff. You all just heckle him, whatever, this, that, and the other. Not having told them that I was going to piss all over them. I had assumed that, and I'd been told, yes, don't worry, they've all been told, and I was full of cider so I could perform, and I was with what was supposed to be a prostitute having sex with, well, if you see the film, you see it, and I've got myself ready with this cider to urinate, woof, and it's difficult enough to remember the bloody Chaucerian, never mind pissing, and I can see these people, obviously not going to be pleased in any case, but they weren't really not pleased, you know. Well, it wasn't, oh my God, he's pissing over me, it was, and it's not a good thing to do, open your mouth like that when someone's pissing over you. I think Confessions of a Window Cleaner is a proper film. When I eventually took the part, and there's a fairly well documented story about me turning it down and everybody else turning it down, and then they were very keen on me doing it, and they got me back in. It was originally an independent film. Columbia came on board. So they are invited, and they said, but you've got no one to play Timmy Lee, you know, who have you got? And they had this list, and Dennis Waterman, Richard Sullivan, Richard Beckinsale, and me, and everyone was sort of a bit wary of this sort of constant sort of shagging, and you know, what was it really all about? And then the script got changed, and then I got called in one more time, and they said, you know, what is the problem? And I said, well, I was 23. I said, I just feel it should be more humorous. They said, give us an idea. I said, well, when he's shagging that girl on the floor, maybe some bubbles are flying out of his arse. And
you regretted saying that, didn't you?
Well, I did as it happened, but I really regret as it happens. But and they sort of were quite miffed. And as I left, apparently what happened was, Tom Nicholas had said, any luck with the casting? And they said, yeah, well, the guy we really want is Robin Askwith, but unfortunately, he's slightly mental and wants bubbles flying out of his arse when he's shagging the girl in the kitchen floor. And the guy said, whatever he wants, give it to him. He's the guy. The thing was, if I took my clothes off, in Pasolini, I'd say, you know, it never really worried me at all. And on a serious note, it was a bit odd for me because as a kid I had polio and was told first that you'll never walk again. And there's a great scene in that Ian Drury biographical film, I think it's called It's Only Rock and Roll, isn't it? Where there's the whole polio sequence, and it's just so accurate about, and you just herded into these homes and told you've just got to celebrate your crippledom, and that was so all I had no thought that one day I would actually get my body back into, I was very, very lucky, into a condition where I would be running around naked, and it was all right, you know. I wasn't. So in other words, I was quite pleased that I could display my body, and it wasn't as I was told it would be. I was very, very lucky.
Did you have fun doing Queen Kong?
But what? I was just surrounded by girls again. You know, it's really odd. It was one of those ideas that sounded good. I went to meet the guy Frank Agrama, who produced and directed it, who really gave a great pitch for the story. It's about 80-foot female gorilla with enormous tits. And I thought, well, I've shagged most things on film, so I'll have a go at that. You know? And the story really sounded. I thought this is quite funny. This oh yeah. And then of course you realise as you get into the filming that it's a 10-minute joke, if that, spread over hours, and it was, you know, it had this extraordinary budget. And there's a scene that's not in the film which I really wish they'd kept, which is Queen Kong has this fantasy sequence of becoming my size and falling in love with me. And there's an actual tap dancing. I tap dance with a monkey. They run out of money, so the special effects, the big day when the gates open, and Queen Kong was coming out, and was I remember Bill Butt, Richardson, and Kirkland, BPRK, who were the special effects company that actually were involved with Ridley Scott that bought Shepperton in the end. Not on the strength of this, came up to me and said, I said, well, I'm really looking forward to this. I said, the 80-foot monkey, they said, well, don't get too excited.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's it. Bobby.